we may have already touched on this, but the United Nations, being a foreign entity, they seem to be having their talons in so many of these programs. Do you think it's high time or even possible for us to get US out of the UN and UN out of the US?
I've been working on that for many years to get that done, and it's becoming more and more obvious by the minute that we have to do that. The whole agenda of the environment of the United Nations is this environmental control and this globalist control of our economy, of our property, of our food supplies, everything else. They're behind this. That's where the powers are. They're working directly with the World Economic Forum, with the World Health Organization, all of that together. And I mean, this is the root. This is where it's coming from worldwide. And I think there is a growing feeling, not only in the United States, but around the world, that people are beginning to understand what the problem is. I know in England, there's some people really rising up against these policies and the power of the UN. And I think we need to start again to push for that to happen. That would clear up a lot of problems.
Totally agree. And as you've said, that there were some inroads made maybe as long as a decade ago toward that, but we need to revive that and get that going. So, a little while ago, you had mentioned the irony of the eagles under threat by the wind farms. The irony being that, this is coming from a place of sustainable, the Green New Deal, that they're hiding behind that green mask, if I can borrow a term from the late Rosa Koire, to push these agendas forward. And wondering what your thoughts are about the pollinators, specifically the honeybees. They're under such threat. I understand they're down by 90% in the US with the honeybees. And as you know, we require on their action to make food. Without the honeybees, there's no food, or most of our food will not be around. So, do you agree with this? Do you think this is relevant to what we're talking about today?
Absolutely. I mean, take a look at this whole drive for the wind towers. We're talking about the eagles and what they're doing with those, with the wind towers. But take a look at the solar panels. Millions of acres they want to put in place. And honeybees are dependent on the weeds that grow out there, the various things that they get the pollen from, the plants that grow there, and these are being eliminated, millions of acres. And if you look under those solar panels, what you're going to see is cement. And not even little bugs, not even little animals can be underneath there. That is an absolute destruction of the environment, all in the name of protecting the environment. You get these people, these environmentalists, out of the way. I've always said if they would come out of their high rises in New York City and touch the ground, they might understand something about the environment. They know nothing. This is a political agenda that has nothing to do with protecting the environment, but it's destroying the environment in so many ways. And the honeybees is just one example.
Thank you for addressing that. And it does seem mind-boggling that, how can they think, they being pushing that we're not connecting? They're saying on one hand, like you say, Green New Deal, sustainability, climate change. We're doing this for the environment, and yet they're destroying it by all the things they profess to be using as remedies. They must think that we collectively don't own a brain. So if I may interject an opinion. So anyway, there's that. But
it'd be them that don't own a brain.
Well, I'm glad you said that one. But yes, I agree. So, both you and Margaret have touched upon this issue of the easement rights. And I'm wondering, how is it possible that a landowner can be kept in the dark as to who owns the rights of their conservation, their easement?
Yeah, the first thing is that these land trusts, like the Nature Conservancy, and there's many, many more all across the country, and they come to the property owner, especially farmers, and farmers who are worried about maybe development taking over their land and so forth. And they'll say, you get this conservation easement and your land will be forever farmland. You sign this in perpetuity. Well, now the farmer, can't get out of that. He's in it forever, but there is no restriction on the land trust that they have to keep the easement themselves. They make money from it. There's a fee to sign these things up, and then they can buy and sell them either with the government or with other land trusts, and they move on. I think I mentioned the Nature Conservancy in one of their recent reports, their reports to the IRS. They had 4 pages of transactions on conservation easements, buying and selling them with other land trusts. It's a profit center for them, and it's a commodity back and forth. Yeah.
Oh, it almost seems like we'd be seeing evidence of that on the New York Stock Exchange, and with the commodities and everything, and betting on the weather, etc., and the futures. But
in time.
Yeah, there you go. So, Tom, what more? We've covered a lot of ground. What more would you like to touch upon today that we may not have talked about? You want to?
I've had a few things that have come up recently that I'm now getting interested in. As we're talking about the CO2 pipeline, there are scientific research that's being done that is showing that we actually are having a CO2 shortage, and that is affecting plants that how they're growing. And a scientist who's involved in this, Dr. Lee Merritt, has said that she sees that we are having the development of a new dust bowl because of this.
They're scrubbing CO2 out of our atmosphere. Now, I mean, people that have been brainwashed by the mainstream media think that there's too much CO2 in the atmosphere. It turns out we're at an all-time low, 419 parts per million. But if you look at like the vegetable growers in Spain or the pot growers in Colorado and places that they do it indoors, I mean, what do? They pump CO2 into their tents to get their plants to grow, because 419 is starvation level for plants. I keep a little picture on my phone from Dr. Willie Soon about this that shows the real historical thing about CO2. So, I mean, it's like, who's doing this? And by the way, speaking of that, who or what is doing it? Who do you think's burning down these the plants, the food production plants? I mean, do we have a Spetsnaz for, not a Spetsnaz, but a Cheka for the food industry that's going around and burning them down? I mean, I feel like we're the kulaks and they're coming after us just like the Bolsheviks did.
Yeah. Well, Lee, I want to congratulate you. You are one of the first people I've ever heard who put those dots together about the CO2 and the food supply.
Back in the 1930s, that was something during the Depression that was a real danger across the country, the Dust Bowl in the Midwest and so forth, in the farmland. And they're looking now at this possibility. And as I mentioned, with the solar panels, for example, where everything underneath is cement. And this is affecting the environment, the natural environment that it needs the land, it needs the ground to have water run off, and so what we're having now where you've got huge amounts of land that is covered by solar panels, there aren't any trees there. And so now we have these winds that are blowing across there. This is stirring up what could be a dust bowl and so forth. So here again, we have them talking about this in the name of protecting the environment, absolutely destroying the environment. And so that is a major issue that we need to look at now is the science to it. I will also mention, I just learned this today, that in Mississippi, there is a CO2 carbon capture pipeline that ruptured in a little town in Mississippi with 5,000 people. And the information I got was that all of a sudden this green cloud came over the entire town, this rupture out of the CO2 pipeline. and it took oxygen out of the air, and people were gasping for air. They were disoriented. Some of them were passing out and so forth. Cars were shutting off because they need oxygen to run. And over 24 people were overcome in a matter of minutes. And people were in their homes collapsing, no oxygen. And there was no emergency training for such a thing to happen. So the first responders didn't know what to do about it. And now we get months later after this happened, people are still reporting that they're having mental fogginess and so forth. Now we're talking about taking 5 states in the Midwest and the most prime farmland and putting these things in there. What happens when they go crazy over oil that leaks out of an oil pipeline? But suddenly this isn't a problem. It is a major problem. It can kill people, and it can absolutely destroy entire towns if ruptures occur.
Wow. I know I had read in doing some of my research for this, I'd read about a rupture. I even think we inserted a photo with the rupture happening somewhere. Not sure if it was there or not, but that is just staggering to have that additional information. And, you know, Tom, when you talk about the severity of this, this might be a very naive question, but how can they get by with that? Is there not an oversight committee who looks at these things in an unbiased way, who looks at the impact on nature, on people, and say, you know, good idea, bad idea, good idea. How can they run roughshod to go screaming through and have their way with all of this? I don't get it.
They have the way they're doing this is they have done their due diligence. They have done the work to get their people into places of decision making. And so you even have judges that are coming down on their side. You have, you know, they consider themselves the environmental experts, and anyone like us who oppose this stuff, we're just Neanderthals that don't know any. All we want to do is pave the earth, even though I'm opposed to them paving the whole earth with the solar panels. But that's how they operate. And they get legislatures and so forth. And this brings up a very major concern that I have. I'm working with some folks in Iowa, and in fact, I'm going to be there in July, and I'm going there to rouse up the farmers. The farmers, they don't want to be in politics. They want to raise their crops. They want to run their farms, and they should be allowed to do that. Yes. But their land is being targeted to be taken from them without their permission, and property rights is disappearing. I received a copy of a letter from one of the county board of supervisors in Iowa, and they wrote this letter to the Iowa Utilities Board. And in it, they're telling how the people in their community are opposed to the pipeline. They're frightened by what's going to happen with it. And then the county supervisor signed the letter saying, "We respectfully ask that you refrain from utilizing eminent domain in your pursuits." I'm sorry, Christine, this is not the time to be polite. We are up against animals who are out there to destroy our entire nation, our food supply, everything, in this lie over climate change. We have proved it time and time and time again, and we need elected officials, county supervisors, city councilmen, state legislators have a lot more power than they even realize. They have the power of nullification, and they need to start to put together legislation in their communities saying we are going to protect the land of the farmers, the land of homeowners, the land of property owners. And this Iowa Utilities Board is a appointed board. And what the game that these guys play, these elected officials, is they put these appointed boards together, and they then they pretend like, well, they have the power, we don't. you created them, and you definitely have the power. You were elected to be the representatives of the people, and there are all kinds of rules and regulations. The Supreme Court has had at least a couple of rulings saying that if efforts go against the Constitution, if laws go from the federal government go against the Constitution, it's unconstitutional. You can nullify it. We have lots of weapons to stand up, but what we need first and foremost is for our local representatives to stop being polite and stand up for the rights of their constituents. And this board can just go hang it, because it doesn't have the power of forcing this eminent domain. And if these elected officials sit back and allow it to happen, they need to be replaced.
Wow, I couldn't agree with you more. It's definitely time to put the pedal to the metal, so to speak. And I'm wondering, you'd mentioned that there are these 5 states poised to come on board, or maybe they're already in process with the CO2 capture pipelines. Is this an overwhelmingly partisan issue? Do these happen to be one-party states more than another, or is it kind of a little mix of the right and the left there?
Well, the states themselves are a mix. Iowa has more of a conservative bent. The states here are Illinois, Minnesota, Nebraska, South Dakota, and Iowa. Nebraska has been fantastic in fighting the 30 by 30, as Margaret is talking about, and their governor is right on with that. And they need to get on board on this carbon capture. What I find a lot right now is a lot of elected officials are saying, what? Carbon capture pipeline, what's that? And so they're just having to learn this. And I believe that what we can do now, they started in Iowa, the state legislator put together legislation to stop this use of eminent domain for this. And it sailed through the committee it was introduced into, but unprecedentedly, before it was brought to the floor of the House of the Iowa legislature, it all of a sudden was stopped. And what we found out is there are powers that started putting the pressure on the legislators and so forth to drop this bill. Don't let this happen. And so they did. And then you have state or county commissioners and city councilmen going around saying, well, golly, there's nothing we can do to stop this. We don't have the power to stop this done. I've got a news article from an Iowa source there, a news article, and it says local governments have no legal power to stop carbon dioxide pipelines. What? What do you mean you don't have any legal power to stop them? These are private entities. They don't have the power of eminent domain. If somebody's imposing power of eminent domain, it is the elected officials themselves that are doing that. And that means they've got the power to not do it. So what I'm saying here is that the city councils and the county commissions, if the state legislature won't pass that bill, they can. They can protect their constituents in their community. That's what needs to happen. I'm going to go to Iowa. I'm going to speak to these local officials, and I'm going to speak to the farmers and other people who are affected by this. And I'm going to do everything I can to start a revolution, rise up and stop this.
Right. Tom, if anyone can do it, it's you. I've seen you in action before. I know you're going to make it happen there. And I'm just holding the vision that it's going to go better than you expect. I just know that. And, bless you for all you're doing with this. So on that note, I don't know what more can be said. It's just such an important issue, as is the 30 by 30 program that Margaret described. And how can we help you and Margaret achieve your goals with these programs?
Well, we are up against an army of these non-governmental organizations that have billions of dollars at their disposal. And we are all very small organizations of volunteers, of very dedicated people. We've been working for a long time. We have scored some incredible victories considering what we're up against. And like we stopped a very bad situation in Tennessee and Mississippi and in Arkansas, where they were going to combine all of these counties together there over those states, taking government further from. We stopped that. We've got good activists across the country. I'm working on building freedom pods across the country where people can learn to fight right there in their own community. And so, we're doing some things that need to be done. We're doing the groundwork. The trouble is that we've gone for decades without doing that, while the other side has. And these appointed boards we're talking about, where'd they come from? Them. These non-governmental organizations, these land trusts, all of that, they have all of this, their tentacles into everything, but they aren't government, and they can be stopped if we can begin to rise up and demand that government stop kowtowing to them and cut them off. So help us. I mean, our website, americanpolicy.org, we have a lot of tools we've created. Our local activist handbook that is helping organizations or local activists organize how to do that and so forth. I'm traveling the country teaching them how to do that, getting them motivated. We have other items there, resolutions for protection of property rights, items you can use to face candidates and get them to protect to pledge to protect property rights, things like that. So you can go there and get those materials and use them. And God help us, we need some money to make sure we can keep doing this. And you can do that on our website as well.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for that. And I'll include links in the show notes below. And another thing I thought I would toss out there, since I have signed up for your newsletter, and I so enjoy every time I see something come up from you, it's just, it's always solid. And I really appreciate that. You can sign up for the newsletter there through the website as well. But if I could just backtrack just a little bit, and I believe it's my understanding that both the NGOs as well as the public-private partnerships are originating from, again, the UN. And I believe it's unconstitutional, correct me if I'm wrong, to do business with a private entity. And so they're down to the roots in our local governments, in our cities and our towns. And how can that be? Can we, it seems like we need to be aware of the international problems, but also we can act. And again, even that, think locally or think globally, act locally. Even that terminology I understand is from the UN, connected with Earth Day, but I'm getting off the topic. But can we deal with the NGOs? Is that possible, or am I being...
Absolutely. First of all, the public-private partnerships, that idea of a partnership between private entities and government is right out of the Mussolini fascist playbook. That's exactly where it's coming from. And it combines, and we're watching not only the organizations, as we've mentioned, but you also now have these global corporations, the Targets, the Walmarts, the Amazons, all of that, all working now in partnership with government. And what they get, the trade back here is that the corporations get the goodies. They get tax breaks, they get sometimes placement for where their business can be that's better than where a local business could place their business, that kind of thing. There's these kind of paybacks. But the government, what they get out of it is they have these corporations using their advertising budgets to promote their policies. You want proof of that? How many times a day do you hear sustainable, sustainable, sustainable? Our product is our product, and that's it. Now you've got the Great Reset, and you've got Klaus Schwab, the World Economic Forum, and that's their entire game. And they are moving to have only companies that can prove that their product is sustainable that will be traded on Wall Street. that will be invested in. This is the new game that's being played. Now you've got the oil industry. You've got Exxon that now has people on its board of directors that don't believe in fossil fuels. Where do you think that's going?
Right.
You've got Ford Motor Company, all the other car companies that are now moving to everything's going to be electric cars. This is all their agenda being put in place by their people. They are not only in government, the media, they're in the businesses as well, and the non-governmental organizations. This is an army of. They wrote Agenda 21 in 1992. They wrote the grant programs from HUD, EPA, Department of Transportation. They put in those grant programs little pieces and parts to impose the Agenda 21 policy. So a community takes a grant, and maybe they took the grant in order to repave Main Street and fix infrastructure underneath it. All of a sudden they find out, oh, with this grant, yeah, we're going to get that infrastructure fixed, but also we've got to put roundabouts on each end of Main Street, this sort of thing. This is how they're imposing the policy. A non-governmental organization is an official organization recognized by the United Nations. It's actually in their charter, non-governmental organizations, and they work in the background and they help put these policies together, and they're writing the policies that then come out in these big show trials, the Agenda 21, the Green New Deal, all of that. So this is what it is. Can we stop them? Yes. What we have to do is get diligent in our own communities to elect city councilmen, county commissioners, state legislators who understand what this is all about. And the NGOs are private organizations. They have no more power than anybody else does, except these government entities give it to them. And if we can stop that, we can cut them off at their knees, just as they have work to do to us. And I see finally more people beginning to recognize this. What people don't understand, you elect a city councilman and you think, oh, he's a good guy. He represents what you believe, how they're going to take the community, how you want it to go. And all of a sudden, after he's been in office for a while, he's not responding to you. Why is that? Because he has been surrounded by these NGOs. They come to him with all these plans in a box, got the money for you too, don't even have to think, here it is. The first thing we do to a new mayor, to a new city councilman or whatever, we send them off to the National Conference of Mayors meeting or the National League of Cities meeting. And they hear from the podium these same NGOs that are telling them, here's the latest, everything's here. You do this long enough, these local officials begin to believe this is the proper role of government. And now one of us walks in and starts to oppose that. Well, we're just crazy because everybody else is doing this. Talk to a city councilman and he will say to you, well, this is just how it's done now. That's what you'll get from them because they have been totally indoctrinated into that. We have not done the due diligence to fight back on this. And when I talk about putting a freedom pod together, what I'm talking about is in your local community, put together a plan that is going to no position is too small to be ignored. Everything is important. Put together a permanent infrastructure from which to fight back. Don't sit there and have the latest thing come up and say, golly gee, what's this about? Hey, Charlie, do you know anything about this? No, by the time you've asked all those questions, they've already got it half in place. You need to have people who are researching, people who are what we call the watchers, who are going to every single public meeting, listening to what's going on, and you'll begin to hear them. They're very open, very honest in many ways about putting this stuff out, but we aren't there to hear it. If we're there, we'll start to see who the players are, and if they got something new coming up, they're going to say something about it, and you can be on top of it before they do it, and you can smash it right then and there. Do that 2 or 3 times, get 1 or 2 of them out of office, and you're going to get the attention of your elected officials, and you can start to turn it around.
Do you have any final words, Tom, you'd like to leave us with? And I'm wanting to send my big thank you to you and Margaret for joining me today. And we've covered such wonderful ground. I've learned so much. And I do hope, and I know, I'm going to say I know that this will make a big difference in the right way for us.
Well, I appreciate your giving us this opportunity. The last thing I'd just like to say is, do not start to look down in defeat and say we have lost the republic and there's nothing we can do. That is absolutely untrue unless you act that way, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Our republic is suffering from neglect, but it is not dead. It is still there. And I have never been more energized after all these years of fighting this, because I see more people starting to get it, starting to see they've overstepped themselves. They've moved too far out, the people putting these plans in place. And this is our opportunity. And, we've got to take action now and just stand up in your own community and fight. We have won some victories, and I think we're going to win some more, and we're going to start to push back. So don't give up. Don't look down in defeat. Understand the words of Sam Adams, who, think of the audacity of what he did. He stood up to the most powerful country in the world, England, the most powerful king in the world, King George, and King George looked at Americans as just something to plunder. This is exactly what we're facing today, that they are looking at us and these global corporations and so forth as something to plunder. And he stood up and he said no. And he said, you don't need a majority in order to win. You need an impassioned minority set the brush fires of freedom in the minds of men. That's our mission. That's what we have to do. And then we can win.
Wrong way to bring this to a close. Awesome. Thank you so much, Tom, for all you are and do. We wish you excellent luck in Iowa, although we know you don't need it. They're lucky to have you. I know you're going to come on like gangbusters. And since I've had the privilege of speaking with you over the years, I can honestly say that I see in you the fire and the momentum and the enthusiasm and the dedication increasing. So it's infectious. I feel the same. And good luck to you. Thank you for all you are and do. And to Margaret as well. Bye for now.